So welcome everyone. This panel is on media optimization, and we're specifically going to focus on how to improve streaming performance. You're going to hear a lot of discussion based around various workflows, and we've got just an amazing panel of really, it's not an understatement to say industry experts. So I'm really honored and very pleased to have these gentlemen with me up on stage. Let me start out, first of all, introduce myself, and I want to briefly define media optimization so that we're kind of all on the same page, as they say, and then I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves, and we're going to launch into an excellent discussion. But my name is Mark Donnigan. I work for a company called Beamer. We are a media optimization vendor, and media optimization, as we're going to be talking about it today, is a quality-driven process that is applied post-encode, pre-packaging. So for those that are producing streaming files, streaming packages, that's where it would go in the workflow. And it works, the core is to generate a perceptually identical file, just smaller. So when we're using the term optimization, this isn't about some sort of enhancement or edge sharpening or modifying the picture. This is about taking a file and making it as small as possible, but keeping the original or the perceptual quality identical. The engine behind this, from a technical perspective, is a perceptual quality measure, which, when it's applied to a reference file, allows us to and allows the file to be reduced to just the smallest extent possible. Again, it's a quality-driven process, not a bitrate process. So some of the workflows represented up here and the workflows that you might be familiar with that this could be applied to is certainly streaming delivery, download services, any media-heavy website, so that could be photos, obviously video. Publishers, anybody who's distributing video at scale or not. You're going to hear from a couple of the studios represented about more production-oriented workflows. So they're not serving millions of customers, but their problems are very similar, just applied in a different manner, maybe a different scale. And then Blu-ray optimization. So hopefully that's helpful to give context for media optimization and what we're going to be talking about here for the next hour. So I'd like to start, and I'm going to ask the panelists, beginning with Brad, to introduce yourself and, of course, tell the audience who you work for, and also what workflows you're specifically involved in supporting within the organization.
Okay. Hi, I'm Brad Collar, Senior Vice President and General Manager of a division of Warner Brothers called GDMX. We perform digital production services and broadcast distribution services for both Warner Brothers as well as some third-party clients of ours. So we have a lot of services that we provide as it relates to distribution of content into the home entertainment environment. So that's everything from DVD and Blu-ray, video encoding, audio encoding, authoring, distribution of the disc images, video on demand, encoding and distribution, e-publishing, broadcast distribution for television syndicated product, advertising distribution, subtitle localization, a lot of kind of the back-end services that go into the products that ultimately get distributed to consumers. And I would say probably at least 95% of the workflows at my division involve video encoding. So it's kind of hard for me to pick one in particular. One right now that we're actively focusing on is trying to even further optimize the quality of our encodes for Blu-ray disc. We employ a variety of different methods there and different technologies. But we're utilizing and trying to squeeze every ounce of quality out of every bit that we distribute out of our facility. Excellent.
All right. Thanks, Brad. Tim?
Okay, I'm Tim Miller. I lead back-end engineering for Flickr at Yahoo. And it's a very different problem space, I think, than what Brad is talking about. It's user-generated content. We have over 100 million users who are uploading videos. Could be from mobile phones, DSLRs, point-and-shoot cameras, other locations, and we need to support storing that, retrieving it, serving at high volume every day, serving millions, tens of millions of streams. And I think the challenge, where the challenge is similar though, is we really look to get what we can out of every bit that we send. User expectations, it's a black box. It should just work. And I think we've started in the past couple years to look much more closely at our whole pipeline to figure out where we can optimize. And there are many, many different things that you can do, but one of the biggest is around how you're doing encoding and how you set the bar for what you want to do, what do you want to get out of a certain bit rate, and how are you going to assess quality. I heard Jan in another session today talking about the machine measures of quality. Those are definitely very important. There are a number of those that are out there that he mentioned, and then there are some proprietary measures as well. But I think it's also critical to get real feedback from users and measure quality through user response as well.
That's great. Thank you. Samir.
Hi, my name is Samir Ahmed. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at EMGO, a transactional VOD company. We stream SD, HD, and Ultra HD movies to consumers. EMGO takes files from all the major studios and encodes them, packages them, encrypts them for delivery to you, direct-to-consumer delivery. Obviously, for us, encoding is core to what we do, and doing a media optimization is important. Giving the users the best possible experience is what we look for, as well as obviously very simple things like cost optimizations. But really, it really is about the consumer. How do we make their experience better? And as the previous two have already said, it's using each bit, optimizing it.
Excellent.
I'm Glenn Marzan. I'm Vice President for Digital Content Technologies at Sony Pictures Entertainment. My workflows are a little different. We've got executives and filmmakers and talent moving around the world, and our group is responsible for getting them any footage that they need for whatever purpose they may need. So could be just a shot, could be entire feature. As we all know, the production process is a bit hectic, and now with iPads and phones and all the different devices, they want their content anytime, any place, 24/7. So optimization for us is about getting the best quality file at the smallest possible size, because what our executives don't understand is bandwidth constraints. So they do understand if they're in a poor place, they can't receive a phone call, but they do not understand when they can't watch HD video. So for us, it is about getting that file to the best quality, because they do want the best quality, in a file size that, based on device and how we're trying to get it to them, allows us to do that. So the optimization for us is critical.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so I want to start with a question, and this is, I'm going to kind of throw this in the air. So the first to grab it, let's get some dialogue going. And so it's really an observation. So what we're hearing is from the industry that the benefits of media optimization to user experience are equal, or in some cases even greater, than cost savings. And what I mean by that, and what I'd like to get some reaction and comment on, is certainly if I'm taking my asset library and I'm reducing it by 30%, some X%, there's a cost savings because I don't have to deliver as much video. So that's a good thing. I think everyone in the room would like to save some money. But the question, and somebody grabbed this, and is, do you agree with that from your perspectives, that the user experience is equally important, maybe even more important than the sheer cost savings in terms of optimizing and using media optimization solutions?
I'll take a crack at that. So for us, clearly, as a studio, and everyone reads the press, we're looking for cost savings. So cost savings is always a component.
Sure.
But at the same time, in the creative process, it's about being able to deliver content to whoever needs it whenever they need it, right? So for us, that the cost savings is an added benefit because as I say, okay, we're going to make this investment and this is why. And oh, by the way, here are, when I do my ROI, I'm doing my ROI. Because if the ROI is the wrong way or there is none, it doesn't get through as easily as if there is ROI. But there is that component of, we're dealing with filmmakers and the heads of studios and things like that. It's critical for us.
It's great.
I'll just elaborate on that. I mean, cost savings is really important to everybody, I think. But for our studio, quality matters. The quality of the product at the end of the day. If it's a crappy product, people aren't going to buy it. And so, we've taken the approach that with every product that we put out, at least what the studio releases to, whether it's from digital cinema or DVD or Blu-ray or Ultra HD when it comes, all the way down to all the various over-the-top streaming providers. We want to make sure that what comes out of our shop is the highest possible quality we can. What's frankly horrifying to us and to some of our executives is that we'll send a very high quality, pristine file to a licensee of the studio's content, say for an over-the-top service, and then what shows up on the other end in a TV and a 10-foot experience for a consumer is it's damaged the fidelity of the picture or audio, and that's the problem we're trying to solve. We've solved that in other areas across the media distribution and digital cinema by having a standard. Same with DVD, standard. Same with Blu-ray. In the streaming world, it doesn't exist. There's been some attempts at it. Ultraviolet CFF was one of those attempts. There's talk about maybe a common streaming format that might come out of Ultraviolet, but those efforts have kind of stalled at this point, and so what that results in, and I'm not trying to be a pessimist here, but it's a real problem for us because, again, we're trying to, as we transition from packaged media to trying to a digital distribution world, we've got to make sure that the consumer puts the same value on that product that they would buy when they do an over-the-top purchase, not rental, purchase, because people buy DVDs and Blu-rays largely, and not less. So if someone's going to replace their whole catalog, everything they own on DVD, they have 100 DVDs on the shelf, and they're going to replace all of those in the digital world, unless they spend the same amount of money on all those products for all 100, the pie is shrunk. And that's the dilemma that the studios are facing in general, and a revenue issue. So it starts with quality. We've got to make sure that if we really want streaming media or over-the-top service, whatever it is, downloading movies digitally, to truly replace packaged media, then the quality has to be there. And it starts with how you optimize that video.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think for us, delivering the best quality video for the consumers is core. We get hundreds of calls a day, thousands of calls a day, from consumers who have issues, and they don't understand that the network is congested. They don't understand the network topology inside people's houses. And so they always complain about quality. And when you go out and you buy or rent a movie, right, you're especially if it's a HD or Ultra HD movie, consumers are waiting for the best possible quality. They don't care about they don't care about compression. They don't care about network issues. They don't care about net neutrality. They don't care. They just want the best possible quality for the money they spend. So optimizations for us is all about making the consumer's experience much better. I think that's the core of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for Flickr, we actually differentiate on quality of photos and videos, so it's a central theme. If we didn't have to worry about the quality, that would make things a lot easier. It's very easy to compress media into oblivion and make it great, very fast experience. And so I think the challenge for us has been to say, okay, if we set our quality bar here, how do we squeeze every last ounce of benefit out of the bandwidth that we do have available? And I think the big challenge, kind of mirroring something that you're saying is that's everything from high-end cable modem to 3G on mobile, or one bar of LTE, and you won't have a lot of success just sort of turning compression down to get that to work. You know, we've looked to a lot of the research that's come out in the past decade to be able to measure, you know, better what we're getting out of a given bit rate and try and include that in our process. So every quarter we're doing something more to get a better result for our users given a high quality bar.
So this is a great setup because really media optimization is all about enabling quality. And I assume most of us have seen the Netflix ISP index. So everybody's seen that, the speed index. If you haven't, basically Netflix literally around the world for all the regions that they serve in, they rank the ISPs based on speed. In the US, and it's been, you know, maybe a month since I last looked, but Verizon, I think, if I recall correctly, was on top at like 3.1 something, 3.2 megabits. Now, you know, that caused you to scratch your head, right? Because you say, well, Fios is 25 megabits, 40 megabits, 50 megabits, so why are they measuring so low? It turns out, and the point that I'm making is not about how they're measuring, but the point is that they're measuring statistics off their player, and the average user who's on that network is able to play a 3 megabit profile. Okay, that's the average. So, and you know, I'm not going to ask for any disclosure of proprietary information, but as much as we're all using HLS, we're all encoding at 6 megabits, and we have our 4.5 megabit profile, and we have our, if you go back and you look at player statistics, it is astounding how those upper profiles just don't get played. They really don't get seen. And you know, and this goes into a whole nother panel we could have on why that is, but that's not the purpose of this panel. But the point is that the user, this is all, we're in the industry, so we understand it, we're here to learn about it. The user doesn't. The user says, I'm paying for 25 megabits, why is my quality not good? Why is it buffering? Yeah. You know, at my friend's house, the picture looked better. You know, the streaming was better. Why is it not good at my house? They don't understand all the issues like what Samir was talking about, the network topology even inside the home. And so, obviously, technologies are going to get better. You know, things will always improve over time. But what that means is that if you're not shooting for the highest quality in around 3 to 4 megabits, then saying that you've got an amazing encode at 6 megabits, and look how beautiful that looks, that's great. A very small percentage of users, and I see heads going, are actually going to be able to view it. So it's something that's very important. So I want to jump in to the next to the next section here. I want to talk about the 3 beneficiaries of media optimization and bring this back to the description that's in the program, and that is that really this session is about how to improve streaming performance. So we want this to be practical and not just strictly stay at kind of a high theoretical level. So I'm going to start with the network, since I just gave the Netflix network example. So the network clearly can benefit, and they can benefit in reduced peering congestion. There's that leads to reduced capex and network expansion investment, just better overall experience. I mean, we've all seen the numbers, right? At peak viewing, peak internet usage hours during the U.S. videos, 60, even 70% of all traffic. I mean, it's just absolutely astounding. We know all this. The second beneficiary is the user, and of course the user, it's simple. It's faster stream starts, it's less buffering, and this is all a result of a smaller file. So if I have a 4 megabit file that's now 2.5 megabits, but it's the perceptual quality of 4 megabits, it's going to stream more smoothly. It's just intuitive. And of course the distributor, and this would be someone like a Samir at MGO, or really even a Yahoo, and even for the studios as they have direct to consumer services. ARPU is directly related. There's some excellent studies out there that show the difference in viewing time, that even a 1 second change in buffering events, so even 1 second lengthening of a buffering event can cause someone to click away an extremely high percentage number of the times. And if you have an average viewing possibility of 40 minutes, depending on your service and what that's fatal. I mean, that just kills ARPU. So let's look at the network. And media optimization is complementary to other ways to optimize traffic, right? And I would like to, get some comments, and I guess, start with, Samir, Tim, and then, Glenn and Brad, feel free to jump in as well. But what is your view on kind of the state of readiness of networks to support high-scale premium content delivery? I'm not talking about, user-generated where maybe, lower bit rates are okay. I'm talking about high scale. What if we were to take 10% of pay TV households and switch them to the open internet tomorrow, just as an example? What's your view on state of readiness? Is it possible? Where's it going to break? Will it break? And how does that relate again to, needing to apply an additional level of media optimization to the process? So, whoever wants to take it first.
You want to go ahead? Okay. Well, I think that would not work out that well from what. So I'll speak to what we've seen. We deliver. We have a pretty big network, global network at Yahoo. We partner with other network providers to both for backbone and CDN. We have some of our own CDN built out, and I think it's a constant evolution for us to make that very dynamic. I think the thing that we struggle with is at any given request or play, how do we choose the best network resources to use, right, to deliver the content to minimize buffering. And I think it's we're getting better at that over time, and we're developing more sophisticated ways of doing that. But we don't see globally. I mean, I wouldn't say that we see a very fast increase in bandwidth. It's definitely rising, and you can look at CDN vendors will do quarterly reports, and you can see that bandwidth is going up. But if you look at the net, you cited the Netflix numbers. The effective ability to stream, it doesn't necessarily go up with enhanced broadband products that users are buying for a number of reasons.
Oh, I think that's a real key point you just made. Is that just because I've upgraded my package, that doesn't necessarily mean I've got
That's
now
right.
access
Yeah,
to.
that's right. I have a fantastic home connection, but I still have a lot of buffering that happens on different services. So I think it's maybe 5-10 years ago, the pace of effective bandwidth was growing at you could count on that more in your strategy if you say, okay, well, where am I going to be in a year? Where am I going to be in 2 years? We're not counting on that to solve all our problems. We're really looking at everything, and that's why optimization. And then that's broadband. I mean, when you look at mobile, then it's you've gone back in many cases years, and that's. I do this now. If I'm binging on some TV show that I found, and I'm going to go to the corner store. I'll take it on my phone. I'll with my headphones, and I'll go to the corner store, and then I'll walk back home. So, and I just expect it to work. And I have pretty bad LTE in my neighborhood. It's maybe 1 bar. So I think it's the network is very dynamic. It's changing a lot. There are a lot of there's the net neutrality debate going on. We'll have to see how that turns out. I wouldn't count on that working out 100% to solve our problems either. So I don't know. That's my perspective.
I think that's interesting. I think from MGO's side as well. I mean, a lot of effort goes into optimizing the files. Obviously, video optimization, but then it's also a lot about working with our CDN partners. Obviously, to we have multiple CDNs. We have an intelligent selection of where the streams are coming from to really optimize the consumer's experience. there's a lot of work that goes into that, and a lot of work goes in also to our tech teams and customer care to educate the users about, you know, in-home, you know, I would say setup of how they stream their devices. You know, some consumers call in and, you know, and they don't really understand, and they have their access point, which is 50 feet away, and they don't understand why they're getting buffering events. And so, you know, you have to walk them through it and educate them. And, you know, everything's wireless today. Everybody thinks that, oh yeah, you know, doesn't matter where you are. You know, you have your TV, you know, 100 feet away from your access point, and you want to stream Ultra HD, and all of a sudden, you know, it's buffering, and it's like, you know, it might, but it seems logic to the people who are here, obviously. But, you know, consumers, you know, they don't understand. So there's a lot of education that goes on, and, you know, from my standpoint, you know, we want to alleviate these issues. We want to put in place, you know, enough technology solutions, technical solutions that will avoid even having that customer call to begin with. Just having it working for consumers, they'll just come back. Yeah.
It needs to just work. You know, a support call is, I mean, I don't know what it costs
Very
you, but it's not
costly,
cheap, right? I'm sure.
So you are optimizing both the payload, so the file size, as well as the network. So
Exactly.
the point is you're working on both sides, which gives you a combined benefit. It's not either or.
Exactly. I mean, before we integrated, you know, some media solutions from Beamer, for example. Very interestingly, I mean, we were working a lot on the CDN side, but yes, there was enhancements, you know, between different CDNs, different locations, different DMAs, different groups, you know, there was some improvements, but, you know, it wasn't enough. We needed to go all the way and also optimize our video files as well. And, you know, as we said earlier, it's not just compressing, because yes, with the evolution of like VP9 and H.265, it's great. It reduces the file size, but that's not enough. It's not enough. You need to go much, much further for consumers today.
Excellent. What are some best practices that you know, anyone responsible for delivering high quality content, but, you know, they live within the limitations of the network, which is all of us? What are some best practices that you might suggest, or that, you know, we should observe? Any thoughts?
Well, on our side, you have to understand that for me, my CDN is the IT networking group, right?
So you're on kind of a managed network, really?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, managed, okay. So 15 years ago when I started at Sony, we have, you know, 80 offices worldwide, and large connectivity into our offices was, you know, 5 megabits, right? Corporate here in Culver City, of course, had 100 at the time, and now we have 10 gig. But, you know, a network like that gets expensive. If you're bringing up, you know, 80 offices, you're not going to give everyone 10 gig. But as we moved forward, and as corporate got more out of, or stayed in the email, file, and print services, but also got into delivering content, they needed to understand, hey, you know, we're going to have to upgrade the network. So going back to, you know, what are we doing on the network? You know, it's making sure that those people for us understand what we're trying to move across the network, and that we're not just moving spreadsheets and email. And then for us, best practices again are, how do we get the best quality visually file in the smallest footprint? Our screening rooms on average are about this size, right? So, you know, we got a 40-foot screen on the wall, and, you know, a little bit better seating than this, but it's the same thing. And it is about that experience for whether it's studio executives in the room, whether it's talent in the room, or whether it's consumers that we've brought into the studio for a focus group, right? Those three different sets of people all have different quality expectations, yet we still have to deliver. And we have to deliver worldwide. So for us, it's, okay, I'm having a screening in LA, or I'm having a screening in New York, or I'm having a screening in Tokyo, or London, or Paris. They all, no matter where you go around the globe, they all expect the same thing. So the difference for me is that I'm having a screening on Wednesday. The file has to be there, and it has to, you know, so for us, the smallest file with the best quality is what we need to achieve.
And we were talking at lunch about some of the timelines too that you have to work with on the creative side, where they seem to think a file can be delivered that fast.
It's like email, right? Click,
Yeah,
isn't it?
right.
It's almost instantaneous.
So, yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, from some of the work that we're doing, from a best practices point of view, the first thing is not to assume that one size fits all, that we're going to do the same thing for every TV show or every movie that we're going to encode for a particular distributor that we have to deliver to, or licensee that we have to deliver to. So What that means is taking the time, and it's man hours, to first evaluate the source material and develop an encoding plan for that film or TV show, and applying the appropriate tools for the problems that may exist with that. So to be a little more specific, great example would be Dirty Harry, the old Dirty Harry movie with Clint Eastwood. Ridiculously heavy film grain in that film. And if you tried to, if we just put it through a garden variety encoder and sent it off to various licensees, when it came down the other end, it would be, it would look like garbage to an average consumer. So there's an example where we would do noise reduction on that content. While it does take away some from the original patina of the film, we have to be realistic here and live within the constraints that we have in this world. And so there would be an example where we would do some different optimization there, or another example would be for The Dark Knight, very dark film. We might look at doing some minor adjustments on the luminance part of the signal, or some of the other high frequency areas, some of the areas where you spend a lot of bits, but you don't get a lot of bang for the buck there from an encoding point of view and from a visual perceptual point of view. So again, the whole idea is trying to spend the bits in the areas that matter when you do have to make compromises. Another thing, it's kind of just another point I want to raise here, that is that for packaged media, since 1996 when we started the DVD format, we've been using variable bitrate encoding. So that was specifically designed to optimize the quality for a given payload size that you have on a physical piece of plastic. So it's not necessarily optimizing the instantaneous bit rate, which is an issue when you have network delivered streaming and so forth. But clearly, so we're not putting a bunch of bits in the end credits with rolling text, and we're putting it in that action scene when the explosion and the fire or whatever, or the areas that require more bits. I know with HLS and adaptive bit rate, that's kind of a step towards variable bit rate. I call it a poor man's variable bit rate. It's not what I would desire. I would desire if the pipes can handle it. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do a single variable bit rate encode. Optimize that, and therefore guarantee that the quality that goes to all the consumers across all the distribution platforms is truly the same as it is in packaged media. When I go into Walmart and I buy that disc, whether I put that in a Samsung player or my player in the car, or I'm going to get the same quality of a picture that comes out, the other end on the screen.
Great. So I have a question for Samir. So Brad has the benefit that he can assign maybe actually a team of compressionists to work on The Dark Knight and go in to the most granular level to ensure, again, the bits are highest quality. You are, Samir, are encoding and ingesting at a much higher volume. So you might have signed a deal and you have 200 assets now, and you have to create all the various profile encodes. So how important is automation and being able to get the highest quality result in an automated way? Or do you have the benefit for certain titles, tent poles, that you do put some human effort into it? Explain, your process.
Yeah, automation is a huge part of our workflow. So we ingest, depending on the season and the type of film coming in and TV shows, anywhere between 300 to 1,000 titles a month. We do transactional VOD and next day TV. So automation is huge. We license some tools to do QC of our files, and we also, although we don't have the luxury to, we do a 3-point test on all of our files. We do have humans actually verify every single one of our files before they go out. And actually, the larger titles that we know, the big blockbusters, the big, comes from the, who know we're going to be highly viewed. Those are the ones we put some extra effort on, and we do, sure. We check at least 5 or 10 different points on the video file itself to make sure that everything's in sync, the quality looks good, and actually we test every single layer as well. We do adaptive streaming. We have 3 to 4 different formats. We use Dash, HLS, smooth streaming, Widevine, Legacy, and all of those actually, each one gets into a package eventually, and each one of those packages still have to be verified as well. So there's a lot of work that goes on into that. So.
But it sounds like an automated optimization process. You really couldn't do it
No,
in
there's-
any
yeah,
other way.
yeah.
But preserving quality, that is music to Glenn and Brad's ears.
Yes.
Well, I mean, and I'll elaborate on that. I mean, with a lot of our distributors, and we've had a lot of discussions with them, and whoever it is that we license to or may license to, and it's really a collaboration. I mean, and it's hard, and we get that you've got to do automation to make it economically viable. But for certain titles or certain properties, there is a bit of a back and forth. At least that's our experience in that we might say, hey, for this one, we want to have creative right approval on what comes down the other end, and if it doesn't, it doesn't meet our requirements, then we'll work with the distributor. And that's important because it's easy for me to say, make it good quality, but we've got to work with our customer, and they're a customer at the end of the day, and make sure that we're working with them. And maybe there's something we can do when we're preparing the mezzanine file or doing something in our process that'll make their life a little easier.
Yeah, great. Okay. Let's talk about the user beneficiary. So we could spend hours talking about the network, and it'd be very interesting. But let's talk about the user. So, question, and it's really simple. So prior to implementing a media optimization solution, give us some of the challenges that you faced in your respective workflows. Again, you're each you have a different customer and different challenges. But with delivering a high-quality experience. So, Glenn, if you want to start, we'll work on down.
Well, dealing with filmmakers and talent and executives, they have a very short attention span. They live in a different world than the rest of us. Yeah, they're creatives. They live in a different world than the rest of us, and it's all about instant gratification, right? So again, it is about a quality experience for them. They want it to work across all devices. They want it to be seamless. They want to be watching, like the example you gave earlier. They want to be watching it in a screening room and then get interrupted and start walking outside and watch it on their iPad and then get to their office and bounce it back. So trying to make that happen, although they see it on commercials all the time, even our own commercials, right? It's a difficult thing to do, and the devil's in the details, obviously, for us. So for that, it is about trying to provide the best experience, even though my user base is very small, right?
But you're solving the same problem.
Same
you
issues.
have varying devices, varying network types, and it's the best experience possible on that device on whatever network they're connected to.
Correct.
And that's what a consumer of, so Samir, that's perfect tee up for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'd like to echo the same thing. I mean, there's really not much to add. It is exactly that. I mean, it's all about hitting the. There's a lot of work that goes into something from my side is also the executives and management team who we talk about delivery of a premium content, and the challenge is that delivering that premium experience to users after they've paid if they've rented something for $3-5 or they've purchased something for $15 to $20. I mean, it's the equivalent of buying a Blu-ray, right? And they're expecting the same.
They expect the same experience.
Exactly the same experience, and you can't just wing it, and you have to optimize, and that was the challenge for us was, and we tried lots of different things, and it is actually it's not just one thing that will solve the issue. It's 3 or 4 different pieces. Yeah.
I think the challenge for us was more about just serving speed and making the apps fast, making the website fast. We had a very naive way of packaging content, photos and videos, and we were able to make things really fast, but they just looked terrible, and we just weren't willing to give up on quality. Going back to the question you asked earlier about best practices, I think in our work, I think one of the most valuable things we've done is, in addition to measuring quality with algorithmically with perceptual measures, perceptual system measures, is experimentation. So we get a sense of what kind of quality we have if we want to, for certain scenarios, make better trade-offs. We'll go in and try and tune things, looking at the measures, but then we'll experiment and we'll recruit. We have 12,000 people at Yahoo. We recruit panels of people that we are pretty sure are not imaging experts, and then we've developed some tools internally where we'll do. They're not as sophisticated as controlled as what the ITU protocols are for testing, but they're fairly sophisticated, and we get enough people. We get could be 100, could be 500. For some of the more significant changes, we've maybe recruited 1,000 people and run them through taste tests where they will tell us, okay, we're looking at an A and a B, and can I tell the difference? If I can, which one's better, or can I not tell the difference? We'll collect that data over a bunch of different variations and use that to help our guide our decision making. And then we'll even extend that out to users as well in a very large scale test, and make sure that any changes we're making are, don't create any statistical difference long term in behavior. So I think critical is experimentation. There's so many options. You have to use your quality goals and use your good sense and reasoning to narrow that down to several options, but then try and get real feedback from consumers and test it. Yeah. And we've been surprised in a number of cases at some of the often we kind of confirm our expectations, but sometimes we really get surprised, and that can open up a big opportunity.
Talking about challenges, I mean, there's a lot of different examples, but one kind of really interesting use case that we've been dealing with is specifically for Blu-ray disc, where for television show product, we've got, for example, 20 episodes of a 30-minute TV show that you're trying to pack onto as few number of physical discs as possible for cost reasons to optimize and be efficient in how you distribute. We had a situation where, in addition to the 20 episodes of this TV show, they wanted to put an hour and a half of bonus material. They had behind-the-scenes documentaries and interviews and all deleted scenes and all that kind of cool stuff that will help enhance the product that's being sold. But to kind of make a long story short, we were told we got to fit this onto 3 Blu-ray discs. And we did our kind of back of the envelope on payload sizes and what we think it'll be. We're like, oh, we got a big problem here. We need 4 discs. And that's a big issue for the studio when you got to increase their physical cost of goods by 33% to add another disc from 3 to 4. And so what we've looked at is, and so the challenge ultimately, that was the technical challenge, but the more kind of political, psychographic challenge, as I call it, was convincing our studio executives that bit rate does not beget quality. So just because we usually do 20 to 25 megabits per second for an HD Blu-ray, average bit rate, we peak at say 35 megabits. If we could do it for 15 megabits or 17 or whatever we needed to do for this show, that would allow us to squeeze it onto 3 discs. The assumption was, oh, you're going to hurt the quality of the show. That's unacceptable. And if the quality was hurt, we would agree that's unacceptable. What we were able to find is that we were able to optimize and to just have more efficient encoding, and it comes down to the measuring. I mean, we're working closely with Beamer on this specific project, and it's been very helpful to have a way to have not only a mathematical way to, and people know PSNR or SSIM, which are technical metrics to measure quality, although studio executives don't care about that stuff. They want to look at it with their own eyes. But from our point of view, we want to kind of have a first go at it and say, okay, are we in the ballpark here? And we were able to achieve, between 20 to 25%. Again, it's dependent on the content. It's content, in the context of the specific content being encoded. But there's an example where we were able to go in, do an A/B test side by side, and say, this is what we normally would have done at 23 megabits per second. Now it's at 17 megabits. not let them know, and they say, pick which one, pick the difference, do an A/B, butterfly, I mean, all kinds of crazy viewing tests, and you couldn't tell the difference. And we've kind of, I think, we've kind of starting to change people's this mindset that, well, if it's not at 20 megabits, then it's bad quality. Or whatever, in the streaming world, it's not 8 megabits, it's bad quality. It's like, well, no, we got to think differently here, because we do have these constraints of the network and all the other things we deal with, right? So we got to think differently.
And frankly, without a tool like media optimization, then that would be true, because I would just be taking my encoder and I would be cranking down the bit rate, and then I would be stepping on quality. So, but that's great. I mean, this is opening up a lot of new opportunities.
Well, I want to make one comment on that, and I think you kind of see this everywhere. Video is so complicated. I mean, even photos are complicated. The whole kind of megapixel race in cameras, both in and not just for point and shoots, but even professional photographers. I think for when digital photography was new, I mean, and even up to fairly recently, we've seen incredible expansion in kind of megapixel count for photos, but and then video is just so complicated. This stuff. It's very difficult to understand, and people want to have, great, there's a number, megabits, there's a bit rate number. Now I want that to just clearly communicate quality. It's an easy number to kind of fixate on. You kind of get a sense of what it is, and, but it's just not that simple at all. And I think, when I look back at, when I try and explain to people what's going on, a lot of people experienced MP3s when that came out, late 90s. If you compare, if I take a CD, audio CD today and encode that with the same encoder that I have, on my, PC, versus what I was encoding, audio CDs with back in, 98, 99, it just at the same bit rate at 128 kbits sounded terrible. In fact, a couple years ago, I went back and re-encoded a bunch of CDs because I was just so sick of listening to them, and I encode them at the same rate. And it's all about advances in the encoders. And so that is where it gets, if it wasn't already complicated enough with this, the standards and the way those work, then when you start digging into the science that goes into encoders, and I think, what's the difference between spending, 2, 3, 4 time, the slow settings in some of the encoders? Well, what it's doing there is very sophisticated. Same bit rate, you can get a lot higher quality, or you can make other trade-offs. And I think that one of the big challenges is just it's very difficult to understand this stuff, and seeing is believing. And I think that's why, again, experimentation, showing people, A/B doing these tests can help, give a lot more insight to people who may not have it otherwise.
No, but I think you said it though. It's about the trade-offs, right? 5, 7 years ago, we were having this conversation earlier. A screener implied that the quality was poor, and now the screener is supposed to look like the theatrical version for us, right? So it's what are those trade-offs? Before they would accept poor quality. For us to be able to deliver faster, right? And now, no, they want the best quality, and they still want those short turnarounds. And then so it's like, okay, well now how do I accomplish that? Because before it was easy, just made it look bad, and they got it in half the time. And now it's like, no, well we want that really good quality, and we still want it in half the time.
That's right.
And so the trade-offs go away.
That's great. So doing a quick time check here, we've got, I guess, about 15 minutes left. I do want to leave some time for questions, so if you have been jotting some questions down, don't lose those. We'll try and get to those, depending how many. Can't promise all of them. But Tim, I thought it might be really helpful to talk about the evaluation process, because, and of course, we've worked with each of the organizations here, so we know that, especially at the studio level, there's the proverbial golden eyes, right? And Glenn, you talked about the screening room and all that. But, to the reason why I keyed in on something you said, Tim, is, the ITU BT500 testing, and you had maybe you didn't follow the exact protocol, but, frankly, the findings lined up exactly, if you had. what were just talk real quick about, the process, because you are talking about taking a file and removing bits. And somebody somewhere has to say, wait a second, do we agree that this, hasn't changed our quality and that we can deliver this? So, what did that process look like, just in a quick nutshell for you,
Sure.
so your organization got over the confidence that we can touch 100 million users' memories. I mean, if you really think about it, this is really significant. 100 million people are on your platform.
Yeah, it's one. You don't want to see some of these feature films cost $250 million, and you want it the effort that goes into that is amazing, and you want it when you buy it, when you get it on the Blu-ray, or if you watch in the hotel, you want to see the wizardry come through, and it's a letdown if you don't see that. But your own, like photos of your families, your friends, it's extremely difficult to sell the idea that we're gonna somehow degrade or damage people's their own content. And I think when we a couple years ago when we started to really seriously look at what we were doing with photo and video and using being efficient and maintaining high quality, there was a big challenge, because there were a lot of people who inside the organization who instantly absolutely tied the idea of smaller size to loss in quality. And I think, fast forwarding to the end, what we've shown is that it's not about what you're taking out, it's about what you're putting in. So, another story I kind of tell to demonstrate this is, with race cars, there's, I forget the name of the guy that designed all the Lotus race cars, but they were, he was being interviewed, and they were asking him, okay, well, how do you, once you've designed the car, how do you go about, taking stuff out and cutting holes in the sheet metal to make it light enough to race? And he said, we just don't think about that at all. We start with a clean sheet of paper and make sure that everything we put in is the right size and the right weight. And can we put in one thing that will serve two purposes and not use multiple elements? And I think we've flipped it now. That's the way we kind of think of producing the assets that we're going to serve, is what needs to go in there to make, to build a high quality file. It's not about, turning up compression. It's about putting the most important stuff in there to begin with. And that's the way all these perceptual encodings work anyways. And it's good that we have standards that we can express that, but you've really got to look at the tools you're using to create the content, and you want to make sure that it's not a naive, naive algorithms that are going into that. And that's where you really get the gains. You get the same result from users. So that was one challenge, I think, organizationally, just the idea of what compression is and what it does is very entrenched in people's minds, and the association with quality. And then, I think testing. I mean, we actually have maybe the opposite problem that I think Glenn was talking about, where we have my team is filled with people who know how JPEG works and know how MPEG and H.264 work, and once you can't ever unsee the art. You're spoiled forever. Like, once you know how the artifacts work, you can't unsee it. So we needed to find enough people who don't know about that stuff to be able to test it on. And we didn't really have to do very sophisticated tests. A very simple web app. We found people on a internal list and mailing list, and asked who would be willing to spend a half hour once a quarter just kind of clicking through some images. And we do one of the things we do however is in the data you can very easily find the people who you're not going to use anymore, who have kind of figured it out and probably lied a little bit, and they're a little more savvy, they know how it works. And so you do need to kind of look at your data and figure out, okay, let's make sure we do have a good test audience. And then what we'll do with those people is we'll add them to an earlier phase where we actually do care. So here's another thing about Flickr. It does turn out that actually we do have users that are very savvy, because we do have kind of semi-pro and pro users that can see these artifacts, that do know how the encodings work. and we treat them kind of separately. And we don't ignore that, but we treat it separately with how we measure.
Sure.
So.
And it's interesting, as we've walked through this process with a lot of different people, at the end of the day, it comes down to a managerial decision as well, in that if your users can't see the difference, even if there's the one golden eye in the organization that says, but I can pick it out every time. You know what, when you're talking about the incredible benefits to user experience and the cost savings, et cetera, then it's...
Well, but I mean, if I can make the app work with 1 bar instead of
That's
3
right.
bars, then that's
Exactly.
fantastic. Like,
Exactly.
that's the benefit.
Yep, that's the
and
benefit.
then, we have a lot of storage costs as well, and that definitely goes into it. But it's really driven by the user
You're being
experience.
modest when you say a lot of storage costs, right? Okay, well, we clearly, I have another half a dozen questions that I think would be really great to talk about. We're just not going to get to them. I do want to open it up for questions from the audience, since we have a few minutes.
Can you name specific optimization products that you use? Can you name noticeably new solutions? Can you be specific with new tools that you are now using?
I'll start. I mean, we probably have every possible encoder and filtering system, and that's ever been made, frankly, in the last 20 years. But we're using Beamer right now for the process I mentioned earlier on the Blu-ray. That was a particular method. We use Miranda, noise reduction tools I mentioned. We use other QC tools. Baton is one that we use that helps us perform kind of more automated quality, or to check for other more just gross problems with audio and video problems, audio video sync, things like that. But I mean, it's a real wide breadth of products that we use every day, and it's changing every day. And that's one thing that we've noticed is that every day someone's got something new. So we're really trying to find partners more than just products, and companies that are aligned with us and our goal to continue to improve and not just give up, if you will, and say, all right, we're just going to have to crank the bit rate up, because that's not our philosophy.
We're the same. We there's a process that comes getting through to us at the studio. So normally, vendors will call in, they somehow get to me. I listen to their spiel over the phone. If it makes sense to me, because I can be very technical when I need to be, then I'll bring them in. And then if most of them come in with powered by PowerPoint, which always works. If they get past that, then we'll bring them in for a real test. And same thing, we use Beamer. We're testing with them. And then QC tools and whatever it takes. And we'll take off we'll take transcoders and stuff just off the shelf and tweak them to the best that they can be tweaked. And that being said, we have all of them. We have DR and Agility and Telestream and Rosette and ones that no one's ever heard of before, just to make sure.
I think on the MGO side, we use also a lot of tools that everybody's mentioned as well. Well, I think we're not looking for small optimizations. What we look for is big jumps in quality, and honestly, we've been working really hard with Beamer to get that optimization, and we really see that that's a big improvement for us.
I think for us it's similar. It's everything that's out there, commercial, open source, proprietary stuff we've developed, things we're working on with our labs and research teams. We have Beamer in there, but everything from that to we use FFmpeg. We use pretty much everything, and I think we're always trying to cook up some new combination of tools to get a better result. Basically, I think is the issue, and I think it's very difficult, though. I mean, I guess from my perspective, we don't get the opportunity to do hand encoding on anything. It's all got to just work automatically, and so that's where for us it's building on top of those technologies a pipeline that will make even higher level decisions about what particular tools we're going to use for any given piece of content, and using using our our knowledge about the given account, or other metadata that we have about the photo to help us make those decisions.
It's the expertise you build over time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I've got 2 people on my team, and this is it. This is what they're quarter after quarter after quarter. They're just trying to make bigger and bigger leaps in quality. So
That's awesome. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
For those of you who are producing HLS or any other adaptive multi-target, different target format for streaming, after implementing optimization, have you actually some of your targets either high or low end or mid-rate targets?
That's a great question. I'm going to repeat that for the video. So excellent question. So the question is, for those who are applying HLS or adapted bitrate, have you actually found after optimization that you were able to remove some of the profiles? You didn't need as many profiles.
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, definitely a lot, actually. Yeah, it's actually interesting. It becomes a headache, actually, because some of the optimizations, you get gains, and so you actually have to figure out new ways of your profiles, of how to select your profiles. So yeah, because not everything is linear in the way that it gets optimized. Obviously, if you have more bits and more, too many bits, you can compress it more than if you don't have enough bits, or if it's been encoded already too much. So actually, there's a kind of different challenge that comes. Actually you can remove, but what do you keep? So there's actually some intelligence that needs to be developed around it of what bit rates you actually keep. Yeah.
Great.
yeah, we're doing HLS. We do want to do that, but we're kind of in parallel with optimization. We're also working on figuring out how we can do some dynamic real-time stuff as well. So that's all bound up together. We're looking at that, as kind of one project. So we haven't done that yet, but that's the goal.
Excellent question. Someone else? Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand. So this is post-encode prepackaged. So using your example of Blu-rays, right? So are you encoding to the bit rate that you want, and then optimizing it down to what it needs to be?
Right. So we do our conventional process, do our encode, which is an iterative process. It's a whole separate discussion, but we get to the file that we normally would do conventionally. It's the quality we want, scene by scene, frame by frame, and then we can run it through a post process that is basically an iterative process that will take that same frame, same source material though, but compare it to what was previously encoded, and iteratively try to optimize that and try use all the tools that you have. In the case of Blu-ray, MPEG-4 AVC main profile, and try different slice sizes and different gop size, whatever that is, until it achieves a measurement, a quality measurement equal to what you originally had in that first encode, with the bitrate savings.
Yeah. So if I can add just 30
So it takes a little bit of time, to be frank. Because it's an iterative process, a lot of machine time, which you can put horsepower behind to speed up, and that's what we're focusing on now, is how to really optimize our production processes.
Right.
Right, because that, to your point, we got to do this stuff quickly a lot of the time. But I think that'll just get better when more processors and faster processors.
Just a little bit more color. It turns out that the more data that's in the file, the larger the percentage gain is. So at say 30 megabits, 40 megabits. So in other words, we're talking about these big like Blu-ray, really, or maybe even close to Mes file. It can be 50, 60% reductions. So that, if you're thinking, well, what if I wanted to deliver just the best quality of 20 megabits? Then you literally could start your encode at 40 megabits. And what you're going to get at 20 is the same quality of 40, but at 20 megabits.
Yeah, just in our tests, we used a 50 megabit file as our MES file. And those files are somewhere in the neighborhood for a full feature, 55 in size, and then 55 gigs in size. And after we were done optimizing, they were 22 gigs in size. Took them into a screening room, threw them up on a 40-foot screen, and our golden eyes couldn't tell the difference. And for us, that's That's it. I don't have to run them through any kind of tests or anything. If the golden eye gives it a thumbs up, I'm done, right? And he's going to know what scenes to go to. You know, I mean, this isn't just someone who looks at the first 5 minutes and says, "Yep, looks great," and walks out, right? He'll tell you what he wants to see. He'll go to those scenes. They're obviously all familiar with our content, so he knows what he's looking for. And if he says it's, you know, or mainly there's probably 5 or 6 of them. If they all give it a thumbs up, I'm done. Then, you know, we say great, and we know what we're doing on our side. Then they start to ask a few technical questions, but, you know, because they're saying, well, why are we looking at this? And we're saying, oh, well, you just looked at a file that was half the size as normal, and you said it was great.
You know,
They can't go back at that point.
Right.
They can't go, no, wait, I didn't know that. And you don't give them that information up front, because they do, you know, you tell them it's 50 megabits, and this other file is 20 megabits, they will find problems.
No, you need to. I mean, definitely, we do double-blind testing, because you know otherwise you get a different result. It's a huge factor. Don't, you know, if you're going to do experiments, you know, you should be very vague about what you're doing, and also include controls where you know A and B are the same image, so you can measure how often. I mean, that's critical to doing tests. Is you want to measure how often people say the same image is actually different, or one is better than the other, because you need a control for that. But this is an example. Look at, you know, what that represents then is if you use those other 25 megabits, it's just waste.
Yes.
It's waste in your network, it's waste on your disks, it's waste in my, you know, my cable modem at home, it's a waste of LTE. It's just not it's, you know, there's no benefit to having that in there. And I think that's got to be, again, there's just this change in mindset about, you know, bit rates versus what you're actually
and our golden eyes, I mean, they see stuff that the average person doesn't see, and I mean, and on a 40-foot screen, it's very visible, because of course they walk right up to the screen. What's this? Yeah. You know, so I mean, they know, right? And they know like that. You'd be amazed at the things they find. You're like, wow, they're really going to talk about that, right? So when they tell you it looks great, you're like, mission accomplished.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, we're 5 minutes over. Thank you very much. You're a great audience. Please join me in thanking the panel.